Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Linkability Insights live stream. My guest today is from Chester in the UK, Richard Dawson, who offers strategic clarity on AI and marketing. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's lovely to be with you.
Thank you, because I know it's late at night and I do appreciate the time out of your busy sleep schedule to join us. So my aim today is to talk about bringing the human back into AI, because I have a feeling that a lot of people are just using it as a tool, just using the outputs that it pumps out and forgetting all about the fact that we are all unique, and that what makes us unique is our particular taste, our opinions and ideas, which are sometimes being lost in the use of AI. And I think that's particularly true on LinkedIn, where we are seeing a lot of content now that's clearly AI produced, and it's very hard to see that as human, authentic, or even really of much value. So I would like to start today by you just telling us a brief overview of what you do so that people can have a better understanding of that first of all.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that. So yes, I've been mentoring, doing marketing mentoring for businesses for about 25 years after a career in corporate, and working with businesses of typically smaller businesses, but with business leaders, founders and their teams, and giving them strategic clarity. And that's what I've discovered, partly by accident, that I'm quite good at giving people, listening to the business, let them tell me about their business and helping them assemble their thoughts in the right order and helping them get some strategic clarity. So I've been doing that for about 25 years, and about 2.5 years ago, I think is that now, when since ChatGPT came out, I saw ChatGPT come out, of course. Like many people, I was curious about it. I'm generally an early adopter of things, and not always, but generally. So I started to play with it, like a lot of us did. We sort of think, well, what does it do, and have a look at it. So I started to play with it. Initially, just sort of experimenting with it. Then I started to use it in a strategic way in my business, about strategy and thinking and organizing my thoughts. And then with my mentoring and clarity work that I was doing with my clients, I started to use it for that as well, for helping them. And I started to talk a little bit about that with clients. They started to ask me about AI. They'd obviously started to hear it. They started to use ChatGPT themselves, for example. So I started to get asked to do AI explainer sessions for clients. I started to do those as well. And about sort of the timescales are so compressed with AI, but about 8 months ago, I signed up and joined a US-based society called the AI Society for some information and structure. And about sort of a month or so later, having come across a lady called Heather Murray, who runs a community called AI for Non-Techies, I joined her online community as well. Fast forward to about 2 or 3 months ago, and I became part of her Train AI mastermind group. So I'm being mentored by Heather. And that's enabled me to give a bit more structure in the way that I talk about AI with businesses, and that's helping them to get that strategic clarity about AI. So that's a sort of a potted history of how I got to where I am today.
And it probably feels like a potted history, given that it's all happened in such a very short space of time. My AI journey only began in January, and we're now at the end of June. And it's not only has AI come on in leaps and bounds in that length of time, but so has my understanding of it. But I think it's probably fair to say that there are a lot of people, Richard, who just see AI as just something like a new tool, a new CRM system, for example. But it's much, much more than that. Am I right?
Yes, it is. I think it's a much bigger moment than that. And I think even a bigger moment than the creation of the internet, which is quite a dramatic thing to say. In the sense that I think whilst most of us can remember pre-internet days and what it was like before we had email and before we had the internet. But if you can remember that and the change that brought about to business models and the way we do business, and here we are using LinkedIn as an example of that. that made a fundamental change to the way that we did business, but it took a long time to happen, and probably 10 or 15 years to have a true impact. I think the issue here is that it's twofold. One is the speed of change, and we're 2.5 years in since ChatGPT was launched, and now we're probably another 2.5 years away, I think, from the point of which we will see wholesale change to lots and lots of businesses. We're already seeing it now, and that's reflected by some of the by some of the sort of messages I get on LinkedIn now from businesses who are saying, well, crikey, it's actually starting to affect things now. We can see without what our clients say to us, we can see in the way that some of our competitors are using it, we can see some change there. So I think to just think, oh, well, I just need to get my AI skills up to date and it's just like another tech upgrade, is a mistake, because I think AI is going to replace a lot of things. And what's important for us as humans is to try to become superhuman with AI. But as professionals, in the way we present ourselves on platforms like LinkedIn, it's important that we try to change the way that we change our messaging to clarify our core advantages as humans and get that across in our offering. And I think what a lot of people are not doing, and hopefully some of them will catch up on this, is they're not spending time thinking about what are my core advantages as a human, what are my human advantages. And I think that's where we are. That the issue here is go beyond just upgrading your skills and your tech skills. It's to say I need to rethink my entire offering and pivot to a different way of presenting my offering. And no doubt we'll talk about some examples of that.
Well, let's talk about some examples of that right now, because I find that really fascinating, given that in my own business, which is to provide LinkedIn services, I am going through that same head scratching exercise is how to remain relevant in the days of AI. Obviously, I have some thoughts around this, but it's the humanness and the things that I can bring as an authority on LinkedIn that I think are going to make the difference. So from your perspective, how are you seeing businesses using this and finding out what their areas of not expertise anymore, because obviously that can be technical, but what can they do as humans that's different from what AI can provide?
Well, I think there's probably three things that there's three things that humans can do that AI probably can't do yet, at least not for a long time, I think, till super intelligence is developed. And it all comes down fundamentally, I think it comes down to this concept of emotional intelligence that humans have. AI will find hard to copy, although I think it will eventually be able to copy some aspects of emotional intelligence. So in emotional intelligence terms, there are things like trust. So your recommendation about a particular LinkedIn strategy is going to have much more value to somebody than if they use AI to look up what a particular LinkedIn strategy should be. They're going to look to you for your expertise to say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's this sense check aspect of human interaction with AI. So there's trust, somebody taking responsibility for that. So, for example, a legal advisor in a law practice, it might be them taking responsibility for AI created contracts and documentation, because nearly all of it will be created by AI, but they're the person who signs it off and is responsible for it, and who the client then trusts that has been produced in the right way. So if say someone is doing marketing strategy or someone doing other forms of consultancy, it's trust, and that's going to be really important. The other aspects are integration. So that's really thinking how AI can embed itself in organizations. So example is selecting the right tools for AI. So there are lots and lots of AI tools around. How do we select the right tools? And it needs a human to interpret what's right for a particular situation. And in the final one, really, the final core one is taste, is good taste. What is good taste? And that's a very subjective thing. And we as humans have lots of different opinions about what's in good taste. But what's going to happen, I think, is that businesses that can understand the concept and could focus on the concept of taste, brands that can focus on good taste, are going to have a significant advantage, because I think what you're going to find is there's going to be so much blandness out there that I think it's that distinctive, extra different taste. So in the professional services world, someone competing purely on technical knowledge is going to struggle. So, for example, AI is going to know a lot more case law or tax regulations than you and I would ever know. But it's that strategic counsel. So, for example, cultural insights, or strategic direction, let's say legal advisor, advising a client, navigating a complicated family business succession. That will be full of things like emotional dynamics, cultural traditions, conflicting stakeholder interests, etc. Brand consultant advising a company on reputation crisis, for example, how to handle that. Maybe a business consultant who's facilitating a merger, and there's maybe some hidden political tensions and other things going on beneath the surface that he or she could spot that AI probably couldn't. So those are probably the main human things that we need to get across in the way we present our AI offering.
That makes sense to me, and I think that businesses are going to be changing beyond all recognition within the next 1 to 2 years on the back of all of these things, but that people's fears about their roles being made obsolete are not altogether true. I just think their focus is going to change. So instead of focusing on doing, they're going to focus on managing the doing of the work, and I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that over the next period of time. And yes, I understand that there are jobs that are going to be automated, mechanized. We've seen that over centuries, haven't we, of that kind of change?
Yeah, well, of course we have. I mean, mostly technology change leads to displacement of jobs, not necessarily losing of jobs, it's displacement. So there are loads of jobs that existed 20, 30, 40 years ago and longer, 100 years ago, that don't exist today. Who would think that people would be doing this job, for example,
exactly
50 years ago? So that's the way you have to look at it as well. So there's lots of opportunity will come from that, but it will be displacement. And I think it's for the people that are your clients, the people that are on LinkedIn, need to start to think about how they pivot their offering, and they start to emphasize that humanness that they bring to things. So those human things that we talked about there, to that emotional intelligence and all the aspects of that, they need to get that into their offering. So even something as simple as getting that into your LinkedIn headline, for example, and somebody, a human could look at a LinkedIn headline and say, yeah, that is actually exactly what you do, whereas AI might not. If anyone on here has ever tried to get ChatGPT to write their LinkedIn headline,
good luck with that.
They'll find that it's somewhat lacking. And I don't think that emotional intelligence and those subtleties and cultural sensitivity is going to change. But I think what's going to change is things that are what you would call relatively mundane intellectual activity is going to be a problem, I think.
You've raised the topic of LinkedIn, so let's look at that for a few minutes now, because obviously that's my main area of interest. And I have been very surprised at the poor AI offering that LinkedIn itself has, given that it is owned by Microsoft, which is a part owner of open source AI, which is the owner of ChatGPT. So you would think that it would be better than it is, and it has, of course, played with AI. Last year, they had a new feature that disappeared remarkably quickly that gave you AI summaries of what you were seeing in a post, and I don't know why why that disappeared, but it didn't last very long at all. But now AI is a premium feature. You have to have a paid LinkedIn account to be able to use its AI features, which in the main, the ones that I've got access to and that I've played with are very poor. So my angle on this is that if you are going to use AI with LinkedIn, that you do it off the platform, and then you can add your humanness to it and bring it back. So for example, if I'm wanting to create a post, I'll start with a few ideas, give it to AI, put it through my brand voice guidelines that AI helped me create, check it against my semantic search prompt, which AI helped me create, have a look at the output, and then see where I can add me. Because I find that whatever output I'm getting from AI when it comes to things like LinkedIn posts or articles, that what makes me tends to disappear. My voice disappears. Now, some people might say that that's a good thing, but I don't happen to think so. I think that it's my voice that makes me authentic and makes me stand out. And I think that's what you would call my entire value proposition, the fact that I'm different, sound different from everybody else. So do you think that is solid advice to be using AI off LinkedIn, put it through whatever checks that you've created using AI, and then bring it back to LinkedIn with your own humanness, your own authenticity, your own voice added?
Yes, I do. I think there are a number of tools you can use. As I know, everyone talks about ChatGPT, but my personal favorite is Claude. That's a better content creator than ChatGPT, in my opinion. I think definitely use one of the mainstream tools. You're right. I think the AI functionality in LinkedIn is very poor, and that's it's not really. I don't understand why they even rolled it out. Actually, to be honest, I don't know why they bothered with it. But definitely use a tool like ChatGPT or Claude, or possibly Google Gemini now, which is getting very good. Those three are probably the main creative tools that I would use. Create, if you're not already doing this, what I would probably do as well is make sure if you think you can get this in the free versions as well of those, you set up your content creation as projects, and you upload all the core documents that for your brand persona, your client personas, your client target criteria documents. You might upload some examples of previous posts that you've done that did really well. So you teach it and train it over a period of time in your brand voice and your voice and your authentic voice. So the result that it produces for you, that you then go and edit and change, is much closer to the process is shorter because it's much closer to the finished article, but it still then needs your sort of touch at the end there.
I would agree with that. What I find is that there's a lot of work up front with AI, setting these things up. You're just talking about in terms of a project or projects. I have been doing this through prompts and setting up prompts that do a variety of jobs, all with the one aim in mind, and making changes to that prompt as I'd find out more things I need to add. And that generally works, but sometimes it doesn't. And a bit like StreamYard, it can throw a hissy fit and really not do the job for you at all. But ultimately, we all need to make sure that we are not putting content out there on LinkedIn that has not been thoroughly checked. And I found recently, when I asked AI to give me a hand to put together some strategy advice about engagement on LinkedIn, that the ideas that it came up with were about 12 to 24 months out of date, not current best practice. And I think that if you aren't aware of these foibles, shall we say, and the fact that it can be still behind the times on things, then you are getting bad advice from it and taking the wrong messages because you simply it's simply not up to date to where you want it to be. So my suggestion around that is to always do what Richard says and make sure that you check everything that comes out of AI before you put it up onto LinkedIn. Richard, I wanted to ask you about something you've already mentioned, which was AI recommendations. And these come up in AI overviews or when you're doing a search for something on AI. And we all want to be the company or the person who is recommended by AI as a specialist or an authority in our field. Now, given that LinkedIn is not visible to AI at this time, and so that means AI can't read your LinkedIn profile. It can, however, read the downloaded PDF version of your profile. How can we better use LinkedIn to be the recommended company or person on AI? I mean, we've got recommendations, we've got 5-star reviews.
Yes.
What else can we do on LinkedIn to make sure we are the recommended person or company of choice?
Well, I think it comes down to the things we were talking before about from a human point of view, authenticity and trust. And I think that's what AI is going to focus on. So yes, recommendation as in you've got some LinkedIn recommendations or you've got some other social proof is going to be important, particularly some social proof from things like Trustpilot and Google reviews as well, maybe. But in terms of what AI is going to look for, it's going to look for authenticity, it's going to look for brand, it's going to look for good taste. So that's going to come across in terms of the recommendations that people make. It's going to be those human factors that are causing it to making people recommend you that are going to be important. But there's also some technical things that you need to do with PDFs and images and text. I think they think it's now called GEO. And so you need to have, there are some technical things you can do with some of your online content, including your website, to help it get better found in AI recommendation. I won't call it AI search, but in AI results when somebody looks for a particular topic. So that's going to be a very fast growing area that I think you probably see some of the SEO agencies pivot to offering those services to businesses for that reason.
Yes, because I think we've all changed how we search these days. We don't search Google so much anymore. We tend to ask our AIs for recommendations or ideas, unless it's something that's specifically local. I can definitely see some value using AI with LinkedIn, but I can also see some real foibles. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about that was authenticity, because at the moment we can show up on an event like this live, you and I both talking to each other from other sides of the world, and it's very clear and very obvious that you and I are here in the room, present and speaking and being seen. But it won't be very long before AI can generate that in our place, and you can just go to bed and I can get on with my day, and it can all happen behind the scenes. But I'm very concerned that that might be the last bastion of authenticity on LinkedIn, where it's very much all about trust and building relationships with people. So I wondered if you had any advice around that for people who are wanting to make sure they don't lose that authenticity, lose that trust, and are able to continue building those relationships in the right way on LinkedIn.
Well, I think that you hit upon a really important issue there, is that what we see, as you will have seen on LinkedIn, you look at the content that's been created. Now, the volume of content has gone up. The blandness score has gone up to 10. And so
or 11.
or even 11. And that's why I think I don't know. And if I had the inside secrets, I would be a very wealthy person. But I think that this is what's going on with LinkedIn and their algorithm at the moment. All these strange things that we're all complaining about, I think, is that people like LinkedIn and the other platforms as well are trying to get their head around how they differentiate content that is obviously AI created, in some cases 100% AI created, and how they focus on stuff that is genuinely human. So I think that something like this, which is a live stream, it will be much harder to replicate using AI, because of all the little quirks, all the human quirks we have. Than, for example, even some aspects of video on LinkedIn, for example, I think are possibly, because I can create my avatar in HeyGen at the moment, and I could put my weekly video out using HeyGen, and people wouldn't know that it wasn't me. And so I think what's probably going to happen is really that the algorithms that LinkedIn and others have are going to start to try to get smarter, and they are getting smarter, I think, at detecting real human connection and not shallow engagement. So the sort of engagement we see when people do strategic engagement on LinkedIn comments, for example, I think there's some evidence already. You can see what is AI generated engagement and what isn't. So I think it's going to be realness over reach, I think, is what we're going to see. And I actually think you're going to possibly continue to see reach and visibility will possibly continue to stay low. But I think it'll all be about engagement and community. So I think LinkedIn communities, your community that you have, for example, and I think things like live streams, webinars, those kind of things will become more important.
Well, that makes sense to me. And I've certainly seen a move away from emphasis on posting towards engagement. And that's definitely what I'm recommending to our clients, is that it's no longer possible to get good visibility on posting alone. You now have to have an engagement strategy running alongside it, and a network building one too, where you also have engagement with people, because it does come back down to those relationships. You're absolutely right. I want to wrap this up with you talking about your human first AI framework. But before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people how you can help them as part of what we've been discussing today, because I think it's important for people to know the kind of things that you are offering in your business to help people overcome the problems and challenges that we've been discussing.
Okay, so you quite rightly say that, that what I talk about a lot is human first AI. So really the core principle of that for me is that strategic clarity before technical complexity. So when I sit down with somebody, a bit like I do with on marketing, I want to understand that I want them to have some strategic clarity about how they're going to use AI, how they're going to explain their human advantage, how they're going to reframe their offering, over and above sessions with them where they might say, well, tell me all about the latest tools and let's talk about how this tool works or how that tool works. So the core of the session and the work that I do on human AI with people is that I will work on clarity. From clarity comes confidence. The confidence then gives you strategy and consistency. And we get execution. So that's what I really focus on really hard with my clients, and I'm aiming to make people superhuman. That's what I'm aiming to them, to help them use AI to amplify what they do, not replace what they are. So the things that I would encourage it as part of that exercise would be, start by doing an AI audit, how you're using AI. So for example, and some of the things you already talked about, are you accepting the first result that AI gives you, or are you applying some kind of strategic filter or review in the way you work it? And professional positioning would be the next thing I would want to talk about. So does your LinkedIn profile, for example, and your other online profiles, do they reflect your evolving value proposition along the lines of things we were talking about? And then also in a skill set assessment, what makes you irreplaceable versus what makes you replaceable. So we talked before about technical knowledge might be something that's replaceable, but those other human skills that aren't. And then also developing, in a quality control sense, developing processes for AI assisted work. So how you can use AI in the right way, but what quality processes have you got in there as a business to make sure that you're using it in the right way, and really make sure that overall that's a relationship focus. You're prioritizing genuine connection in your strategy over and above connection for the sake of it. So that's the core of what the sort of work that I do in terms of the sessions that I run for people. And that's really encapsulates what I do as Human First AI.
Human First AI. And I love the idea of being a superhuman. And I'm a Red Dwarf fan. I don't know if you know the old now sci-fi comedy Red Dwarf, but there was a character in it called Air Cool Platini who would run his hands through his hair and call himself a superhuman. And I can never hear the word without thinking of that. Richard, people can reach out to you on LinkedIn and connect with you and follow your content there. You and I have been connected for quite a few months now, and I have to say your content is brilliant. I always look forward to seeing your name showing up in my feed, often at a very convenient time of day for me, which is why I think we've been able to develop our own professional relationship on LinkedIn. And here you are today spending time with us talking about how to be human and use your AI. We've added an AI section to our linkability.biz platform for our private members. So if you would like to have a look at that and see what we're offering in that area, please do. I've also used AI to set up a mini course on how to use AI for LinkedIn. And that's available over at linkability.biz as well. So do have a look at that, because it's not only is it an interesting course, but it's a great way to see what AI can actually do. And that has been part of my journey this year, is finding out the different ways that we're able to use AI. But I've taken on board what you said about Claude, which is not a platform I've had much of a look at, but I do think it's worth my while checking that one out.
Definitely.
Because I've been doing a lot with ChatGPT. Any final thoughts to leave us with today? Richard, something I've not asked, something that's really important that you want people to take away and never ever forget?
Well, I just think it's to remember that to really focus on your human advantages, and not to. It's tempting to see AI in a negative way, and of course there are some negative underlying things about AI and topics we haven't discussed today. But I think to see the opportunity in it to make you a superhuman. And that if you, that it's not likely that you'll be replaced by AI, but you could be replaced by a human who uses AI well. And I think that's probably what I would like people to think of.
And I agree. I think that makes an awful lot of sense. And for people who haven't yet begun their AI journey, I do recommend starting it. It's not nearly as scary as you think. In fact, it's absolutely fascinating. And I am not naturally an early adopter on things, but I have found that since I've opened my mind to it, that I've learned an awful lot, not only about AI, but about business in general, and about better ways to present the work that we do and the offerings that we make. And so I am really looking forward to the second half of this year, Richard, and maybe we should meet back again in 6 months' time.
I think we should. I think we should. I mean, how much will have changed in 6 months? A lot, I think.
It'll be a huge, and we'll look back on it and go, goodness me, all of those things that we were talking about then.
All changed.
Absolutely.
Well, but what won't change is these human advantages. That's what won't change.
I absolutely agree. So we will leave it there. Richard, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everybody else, for watching our live stream today. We really appreciate it. We'll be back with you in a fortnight, and bye for now.